Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the world's most captivating and, honestly, most debated mysteries. Tucked right there in the shallow waters between the southeastern coast of India and the northwestern coast of Sri Lanka is a structure that has sparked literally millennia of devotion and decades of intense scientific and political arguments. I mean, depending on who you ask, you're looking at either a profound, undeniable testament to divine engineering, or you're looking at a miraculous, totally natural quirk of Earth's history. And that brings us to the big central question we're tackling today. Is this structure a natural wonder, or is it a marvel of ancient engineering? Look, our goal with this explainer is to play it completely down the middle. We're going to unpack the hard scientific data, the deeply held cultural beliefs, and the modern controversies that make this site such a hot-button issue. We are absolutely not here to take sides. We're just here to look closely at what the sources, the ancient scriptures, and the satellites actually tell us. To really wrap your head around the sheer magnitude of what we're discussing, you just need to think about one number: 48. This structure stretches a massive 48 kilometers. That's about 30 miles, straight across the ocean. Imagine a physical feature, the exact length of a marathon, spanning the sea just to connect two distinct landmasses. It's an absolutely staggering scale that commands your attention, no matter how you think it got there. So, what is this thing, physically speaking? Well, today it exists as this really unique chain of limestone shoals, sandbanks, and coral reefs. It acts like a perfect dividing line, separating the Gulf of Mannar down to the southwest from the Palk Strait up to the northeast. But the thing that makes it so unique, and honestly a historical nightmare for sailors, is the depth. The water here is unbelievably shallow. We're talking mostly 1 to 3 meters deep. That creates this formidable underwater barrier, making it practically impossible for modern ships to just sail right through. To understand why this 48-kilometer strip of limestone is so fiercely protected today, we first need to look at Part 1, the epic lens. What's so fascinating is that this bridge holds this incredible dual spiritual identity. In the Hindu tradition, coming from the ancient epic the Ramayana, it's known as Ram Setu. It was constructed by Lord Rama and his devoted Vanara army to cross the ocean and rescue his wife, Sita, from the demon king Ravana in Lanka. But then, Islamic tradition offers a totally different but equally fascinating narrative, calling it Adam's Bridge. The belief there is that after Adam was expelled from the Garden of Eden, he actually crossed this very structure to reach Adam's Peak over in Sri Lanka. When you dig into the Hindu scriptures, the details of Ram Setu's construction are just incredibly vivid. The texts say it was built in a mere 5 days, guided by the divine architects Nala and Neel, and they supposedly used these legendary floating stones that allowed heavy boulders to literally just rest on the water's surface. This isn't just a passing mention either. It's a core story referenced heavily across major sacred texts like the Skanda, Vishnu, Ramanda, and Agni Puranas. And here's a wild historical fact. Temple records from Rameshwaram actually suggest this connection was mostly above sea level and totally walkable right up until the late 1400s. That's when a massive, devastating cyclone finally shattered the land link. And you know, that 15th century cyclone is actually the perfect pivot point for us. Let's move into Part 2, Science and Geological Evolution. If we map out the geological evidence, the Earth tells a really dynamic story. We have to wind the clock way, way back, about 125,000 years ago. That's when tectonic shifts caused Sri Lanka to originally break away from the Indian landmass. But the story doesn't end there. During the last glacial period, roughly 20,000 years ago, global sea levels dropped dramatically. We're talking a massive 118 to 120 meter drop. This completely exposed the seabed, reconnecting the two lands. Fast forward to the Holocene epoch, about 7,000 years ago, and rising waters submerged the strait all over again. And then, finally, in 1480 AE, that severe cyclone hit, destroying the very last of the walkable shoals. Okay, but what about those miraculous floating stones from the ancient legends? Well, science actually offers an entirely natural, but still super cool explanation for this. Researchers point to two specific things found in the area. First is pumice. It's a volcanic rock that cools so quickly it traps gas bubbles inside, making it less dense than water. The second is porous pipe coral, which grows abundantly in the Gulf of Mannar. These corals trap pockets of air inside them, making them incredibly lightweight and, you guessed it, buoyant. It's essentially nature's own version of bubble wrap. And our modern understanding of this area got a massive upgrade recently. Thanks to a 6-year collaboration between ISRO and NASA using the ISASat-2 satellite, we finally have a high-resolution undersea map of the whole structure. They used penetrating lasers to look right through those shallow waters. What they found was that the bridge is exactly 99.8% submerged. They also identified exactly 11 narrow channels that let water flow back and forth, and they confirmed the structure is a continuous chain of 103 distinct small patch reefs. It's basically a giant 48-kilometer dotted line across the ocean floor. So, with all these high-tech maps, you'd think the debate would be settled for good, right? Well, actually, scratch that. The new data has only fueled the fire. Welcome to Part 3, the man-made debate. See, people who argue for the man-made theory aren't just pointing to ancient texts anymore. They're pointing to very specific geological anomalies. Take S. Badrinarayan, for instance. He's a former director of the Geological Survey of India. He pointed to core sampling studies that show something really weird. The sand base at the bottom is incredibly old, but the top layer of boulders and coral seems to just sit right on top of it, unnaturally. He stated that finding loose marine sand underneath that heavy coral layer clearly indicates the coral was transported by somebody and just dumped there. Supporters also point out that the bridge is incredibly straight, closely mirroring a very specific 10-to-1 length-to-width ratio that's actually described in the ancient texts. But here's where the plot thickens, because we have totally competing interpretations of the exact same physical data. On the exact flip side of Badrinarayan's claims, you have the official stance from the government of India in 2018. Based on really extensive studies by the Marine and Coastal Survey Division, they told the Rajya Sabha that field observations and drilling data could not bring out any indications or evidences of man-made structures in the present-day seabed. So you have two highly trained, very different conclusions drawn from the exact same stretch of ocean. And I need to stress, this is not just some quiet academic debate happening in a library somewhere. This argument has massive, real-world implications. That brings us to Part 4, the Canal Project controversy. Enter the Setu Enigma project. This was an idea that had been kicked around for over 150 years before it was officially greenlit in 2005. The main selling point? Economics. Dredging a deepwater channel right through the bridge would cut out over 400 kilometers and 30 whole hours of travel time for cargo ships because they wouldn't have to sail all the way around Sri Lanka anymore. Sounds great on paper, right? But the backlash was immediate and it was fierce. Environmentalists warned that dredging would absolutely wreck the rich marine life in the Gulf of Mannar and might even increase tsunami risks for the local coastlines. Economists chimed in saying the canal wouldn't even be wide enough for modern ships over 30,000 tons. And, of course, the religious objections to literally destroying a site that millions of people hold sacred were deafening. The uproar got so intense that the Supreme Court of India stepped in and officially halted the entire project in 2013. So, the canal project is dead in the water. The origin of the bridge is still hotly disputed, and the structure just sits there, exactly where it has for millennia. Where do we go from here? Let's get into Part 5, the quest for truth. To finally put this enigma to rest, the Archaeological Survey of India has approved a massive new underwater exploration project. And their game plan is rigorous. First, they're deploying advanced research vessels, like the Sindhu Sadhana, right out to the site. Second, they're going to drill down and pull up sediment cores from 35 to 40 meters below the water level. Third, and this is the really cool part, scientists are going to use radiometric and thermoluminescence dating. That's a technique that measures trapped radiation to figure out exactly when those materials last saw sunlight. They want the absolute, undisputed age of the sand and corals. And fourth, they'll be sweeping the surrounding seabed, looking for any physical signs of submerged ancient human habitations. But while the scientists are gearing up in the ocean, the battle is still raging in the courtroom. There's a major, ongoing legal push right now. Figures like former Member of Parliament Subramanian Swamy have been actively petitioning the Supreme Court, urging the government to officially declare Ram Setu an ancient monument of national importance. If that happens, it would permanently protect this 48-kilometer stretch from any future dredging or corporate development. It would essentially take its deep historical and religious significance and forge it into an unbreachable legal shield. All of this leaves us with a really powerful, lingering thought to close on. What is the true value of Ram Setu? Does it lie in its sheer geological rarity as this bizarre, naturally occurring chain of limestone shoals? Does it lie in the immense cultural and religious power that has literally inspired millions of people for generations? Or does its power come from the enduring mystery itself? Paradoxically, it might just be the fact that it remains an unsolved enigma that makes people from all walks of life so desperate to protect it. It's this incredibly rare space where human myth, hard science, and ancient history are all forced to stand shoulder to shoulder in the shallow waters. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. What do you think is the real story here? Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.